And I'm going to invite everybody to take a moment, wherever you are, close your eyes for a minute. Let's take a couple of deep breaths. I'm going to breathe in for 4 seconds. We're going to hold it for 4 seconds. We're going to breathe out for 4 seconds. We're going to hold it for 4 seconds. And we're going to do that 4 times. Just relax. Close your eyes. And this is literally what Jesus meant by go into the room, go into your closet and shut the door. He's talking about your mind. The entire Bible is a book about you and your mind and consciousness. And so much gets taken out of context when you look at it from a literal perspective. It's the reason why I said last week that people have religion and no peace. It's because that book is not about everybody else. It is about you. So I want you to close your eyes for a second. Breathe in for 4 seconds. Hold it. Breathe out. Hold it. Breathe in for 4 seconds. Hold it for 4 seconds. Breathe out for 4 seconds. Hold it for 4 seconds. In for 4. Hold it for 4. Out. Hold it for 4. In for 4. Hold. Out. Hold. I'm going to go ahead and mute everyone for now. So listen, if you're here, it's because you're looking for inner peace and some level of emotional freedom in your life. If you're here, it's because you've got some really big questions about yourself, about life, and you want answers to those questions, but you don't want all the dogma. You want to create a relationship with God, but you don't want the religion. And the one thing I loved about studying Jesus is that Jesus was all about the relationship with God, between God and yourself. But he also made sure to help you understand that God did not exist outside of you. And this is where a lot of people have been led astray. This is why a lot of people are leaving organized religion. It's because they're doing the stuff, but still not experiencing the promises. And that's because there's a big difference between doing religion and having a relationship. And that relationship is an intimate one between you and the creator of all things. The reason why I even begun doing this, and I'm going to say the same thing I said last week for those of you that weren't here. I started this ministry because this is what I needed. This is what I was looking for. When I first started my journey of spirituality or creating a relationship with God, the idea that I wasn't worthy, but God gave me his love anyway, just didn't sit right with me. The idea of hellfire and damnation, it didn't sit right with me. It felt like people were just trying to control me. The idea of unconditional love and then and out of the same breath, giving me love, but with conditions, didn't make sense to me. So I got interested in becoming a disciple of Jesus myself, but not as something that is unattainable to me, but I was interested in studying him as a master teacher. Because Jesus said that the kingdom of heaven was at hand. He said, repent. The first thing he said as soon as he showed up on the scene in Matthew is repent, which simply means to change your mind. It doesn't mean you're a terrible person. It doesn't mean that you should feel shame and guilt for all the mistakes that you've made. It simply means to change your mind. He said, the kingdom of heaven is here now, but don't look out there. Don't look over there. It's in here. And when I finally understood that for me, I started to understand how to gain the peace of mind that I was looking for, how to gain the emotional freedom that I was looking for, how to truly be able to accept myself. When one of the Pharisees asked Jesus, he said, out of the 613 laws, which ones are most important? And it was a trick. But Jesus said, the number one law is to love God with all your heart. He said, but there's a second law that's just as important and equal to the first. And that is to love your neighbor as you love yourself. And you can wrap every other law into those two. The challenge is that most people, most of you, you don't truly know how to love yourself. Some of you like yourself, but you don't actually love yourself. Because loving yourself unconditionally is to love yourself without conditions, to accept yourself just as you are and understand that you are perfect. Now, I'm going to say something that may shock some of you, especially if you weren't here last week. It is my personal belief of what I believe Jesus was trying to convey, that everyone was having such a hard time grasping because the bigness of it. And that is that you are Christ. And the only thing that needs to be saved is your mind. And everything he taught was to help you see the divinity within yourself. Let the dead bury the dead means to let go of all the mistakes that you've made in the past. Let it go, because that is what's keeping you from loving yourself wholly. What I want to offer you here on Wednesday nights is the opportunity to take a look in the mirror every single week. This is not to entertain you. This is not to make you feel good necessarily. I want to help you live and be the fruit of the Spirit. Because by being the fruit of the Spirit, you truly do get to experience heaven right here on earth. By being the fruit of the Spirit, it means you've undergone a deep transformational journey so that love and peace and kindness and gentleness is natural to you. It's natural in your interactions every single day. But when you're just trying to do the fruit, when you're trying to do love and you're trying to be love, it shows up fake. It shows up like you're trying. And that's because you've got things deep down that's blocking you from just living that way wholly, authentically, so that love, peace, and joy is oozing out of you regardless of the situation. By being the fruit, everything you do is authentic. And no matter the situation and the people around you, you show up as your authentic, loving self, regardless of who's in the room and what they've done. By being the fruit, love, peace, and joy is effortless. But when you're just doing it, it's a struggle. I promise you, you can experience heaven on earth by being the fruit of the Spirit. I shared this last week and I'm going to continue to share it. There's the difference between being and doing is if I wanted my son to act responsibly because he refuses to be responsible, I'd have to set up rules. I'd have to set up protocols for him to follow to create the outcome of responsibility. But if one day he decides to be responsible and responsible is just oozing out of him, then the rules are no longer necessary. But a lot of you have been convinced that you need the rules, and you only need the rules because you have no idea who you are. If you knew your own divinity, if you understood your own divinity, you would not need those rules. Because if I know who I am, then that means I know who you are. If I know who I am, then I know that you are only a different expression of me because we are both sunbeams to the sun. I want you to imagine a strobe light. And I want you to imagine seeing that strobe light on the floor and all these different little lights on the floor moving around to create this amazing illusion of entertainment. Now, we know, looking at the strobe light from a distance, we can see the beams connected to each dot on the floor. And so I want you to imagine the green dot going to the red dot saying, I'm better than you because I'm red and you're green. Or the green dot going to the blue dot and going, you're inferior to me. It sounds stupid, but that's how stupid it is when human beings go to one another or get in front of one another talking about how better they are than somebody else. You have no idea who you are. You, just like everyone else, is a sunbeam from the same sun. And the only thing that separates us is our personalities. To know who you are is to know that no one deserves your judgment and everyone deserves your love. And that's what tonight's message is about. We are continuing our series on being unconditional love. And that is to love without conditions. Last week, we talked about the logs that are in your eye, keeping you from being unconditional love. In this 5-week series, we're going to be covering 5 logs. It's not all of them, but 5 logs. Jesus said, why worry about the speck in your brother's eye when you have a log in your eye? He said, take the log out of your own eye and you will clearly see how to help your brother. But in this physical body, with this ego, with this personality, with the way some of us grew up, you have these logs, these ways of protecting yourself that you feel is necessary to protect yourself emotionally. And last week, one of those logs was about holding grudges, and we got deep into the beliefs that you would need to subscribe to hold on to grudges. But I want you to understand, loving unconditionally isn't for anyone else but you. And here's why. Because we've heard over and over and over again that thoughts create your reality. It even says it right here in the good book. As a man thinketh in his heart, the heart meaning subconscious mind, as a man thinks in his subconscious mind, so shall he be. So I'm going to share something controversial to many. But when you really allow yourself to move past the controversy of it and think for yourself. When Moses went to the top of the hill, he asked God, who should I tell them sent me? Moses said, tell them I am sent me. What are the first 2 words you use to describe yourself? See, the names that I'm seeing here on the screen, that's not your real name. That's the name that was given to you to separate you from all the other human beings. But your name is I am. That is who you are. Pure consciousness, pure possibility. You are a spirit being with an intellect inside of a physical body. Limitless. And so when Jesus talks about I and my Father are one, what he's talking about the Father being I am. You and I am are one, but the Father, yes, is greater than you because I am is constant. It never changes, but it changes everything. I am never changes, but I am changes everything. If I say I am strong, I am weak. I am rich. I am poor. When Moses said, who should I tell them sent me? And God said, tell them I am sent me. Moses says, I am who? God says, whatever I am, that I am. Whatever they need me to be, that is who I am for them. And that's why it says, let the weak man say, I am strong. And I make a joke when people say things like, Steve, you take the Lord's name in vain, because I'll cuss. I don't have time to argue with folks, especially when they don't know the history. But I tell them, I say, no. God said his name was I am. And every time you say, I am not good enough, I am not worthy, I am not deserving, you are taking the Lord's name in vain. Because the only sin that you commit is to not recognize yourself in Christ. Not knowing who you are is the original sin. Separating yourself. This is the message. That if you pay attention to Jesus's words, don't get caught up in the story. Pay attention to his words. He was telling you exactly who you are. And he was showing you how to access that part of you. But it only can be accessed when you let go of the world. And by world meaning society. The way society operates. In order to find out and become true to who you are, you have to be willing to let go of society's rules, because society is set up for you to see yourself small. Society is set up for you to hold a grudge and judge your brother or sister. Society is set up so that unconditional love is damn near impossible. If you truly want to experience heaven on earth for you, then the only thing that needs saving is your mind, and the only person you need to save is yourself. Thoughts create reality. God said his name was I am. Whatever comes after I am shows up and manifests in your life. So watch this. Ergo, God is thought. Pure thought. It doesn't say, as a man thinketh in his heart, so shall he be, unless some blue-eyed, blonde-haired figure in the sky that's running around judging everybody and telling everybody they ain't shit decides different for you. That's not what it says. It's as you think in your heart, so shall you be. So if God is thought, then the purpose of not holding grudges, not judging, being in forgiveness is so that your thoughts aren't being tainted, so that you aren't creating things in your reality that you don't want to experience. Heaven or hell exists right between your ears. This is not hyperbole. This is not far-fetched. This is not woo-woo. This is what we understand about psychology, quantum mechanics, and the nature of reality. Jesus was far beyond his time. What you believe, your personal beliefs, is your personal God. Think about it. Whatever you believe controls what you think. Whatever you think controls how you feel. Whatever you feel controls what you do. Whatever you do gives you a result, and that result always reaffirms what you believed in the first place. You cannot outrun your belief system. So your belief system is your personal God. That's what Jesus is trying to help you understand. Thoughts create your reality. Watch your thinking. Do not judge. This is the reason why it says in Luke 6:37-38. Luke 6:37-38. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. But it's not being judged by a God outside of you. It's by being judged by the God inside of you. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. There's something you got to understand about the subconscious mind. It's got 21 jobs. And part of that 21 jobs is that it takes everything personally. It's a highly moral being. Hell, I just lost my train of thought. But the subconscious mind, let's start with number one. It takes everything personally. If I were to say, rich people are greedy. Oh, that's what the third one was. It makes associations. So the subconscious mind has 21 jobs. 3 of those jobs is that it makes associations. It's a highly moral being. And it takes everything personal. I want you to get the science. Take the woo-woo out. Take, burning in hell out of the entire situation. I want you to understand the tangibleness of this scripture. It says, do not be judged, and ye will not be judged. Understand that the subconscious mind, number one, it makes associations. Meaning, if a mom comes to her son and says, you just like your goddamn daddy, that son is making an association. She said, I'm just like my dad. Now watch this. Takes everything personally. I'm just like my dad, makes an association. She says, my daddy is selfish. Subconscious mind being a highly moral being. So selfishness is bad. She says, I'm like my dad. She don't like my dad. Ergo, she probably don't like me. Or maybe you might say something like, rich people are greedy. Well, first of all, you think you've been told, and of course, greed can lead to a lot of suffering. We're not going to say good or bad. We're going to say useful and unuseful. Will greed create the peace of mind that you want? No. Therefore, it's unuseful. We're not going to judge good or bad because good or bad is relative. So if your mind says, if you judge rich people and say rich people are greedy, your mind being a highly moral being, your subconscious mind is going to go, oh, greed is bad. Rich people greedy. Takes everything personally. Oh, well then I don't want to be rich. Because rich is greedy and greedy is bad. And now with whatever financial struggles you may have, you prevent yourself from ever becoming wealthy simply because you judged and you condemned. You condemn you. Are y'all with me? That's the purpose of this scripture. It is not about whether you're going to burn in a lake of fire. Let go of the boogeyman stories. If you know anything about biblical history, you know, even in the first 300 years after Jesus died, how many different doctrines there were. Let go of the boogeyman stories so that you can grasp how awesome and amazing Jesus's messages were for you to unlock your mind. Do not judge, and you will not be judged by your own mind. Because nothing can be okay for you if it's not okay for some. I mean, nothing that you don't allow to be okay for somebody else could ever be okay for you. So judging is an act against yourself. And it's not because some divine being outside of you is taking a tally of if you're a good boy or if you're a bad boy. It's not fucking Santa Claus. But this is specifically addressing how your unconscious mind works and how everything you condemn of other people, you are taking on yourself. And whatever cannot be forgiven in others is something that can't be forgiven in you. So there are burdens. Here are 3 burdens to judging people that you cause yourself. By judging people, you consistently put strains on your relationships and create distance and distrust between you and the people around you. Some of you complain about not having the type of relationships that you desire, not having the closeness in the relationships that you desire, and yet you don't understand that it is your judgment that's creating the distrust. Judgment also leads to inner turmoil within yourself because you're always comparing. And a good friend of mine, I remember he said that comparing is the thief of joy. And when you judge, you're not only stealing their joy, but you're stealing your own. And by comparing, you cause stress. You cause anxiety within yourself. You block your own peace. To fully live by the fruit requires compassion, but you don't have compassion and judgment at the same time. This is not a sometimey thing. You can't be kind of loving. That's like being kind of pregnant. You're either loving unconditionally or you're not. You're either loving with conditions or you're loving, or you're either an unconditional love or you love with conditions. But if you love other people with conditions, it's because you only love you with conditions. You will never experience the kingdom, the enlightenment, the joy when you judge. But some of y'all think y'all got good reasons to judge. Some of you believe you're better than other people. You truly believe that. But the only reason why you would subscribe to a belief like that is if deep down you weren't really sure about yourself. I remember there was one gentleman that I was having a conversation with, and he talked about his wanting to prove everybody wrong was his fuel for his success. And I said, boy, you're going to wear yourself out. He said, why you say that? I said, because in order to feel that you need to prove that you're better than other people, you first have to subscribe to the idea that you may not be. Because someone who's secure in who they are never, ever, ever feel like they have to perform for other people. A person who's truly secure in who they are can say no. The disciples were asking Jesus, or people coming to Jesus to ask him to do wonders and signs. By the way, only in the book of John does Jesus perform wonders and signs. But other people were like, hey, we want to see some signs. We want to see some miracles. We want to see some miracles. Jesus was like, no, I don't need to prove anything. He knew who he was. But in order for you to feel like you need to prove yourself, the only person you're trying to prove that you are good enough to is yourself. No amount of proving that you're good enough or you're better than other people will make you feel better about yourself. It's only going to alienate you from having the relationships that you desire to have. And at the end of the day, you can have all the possessions you want, but a life without loving relationships, you missed the mark. Some of you think that other people's mistakes are unforgivable. You really believe that? Some of you really believe that people should not be forgiven. You hold on tight to when people have done you wrong. Because you think that emotion, that anger that you feel is going to protect you from being hurt again, from being hurt by other people. But the only person that is hurting is you. And the reason why you judge people so hard is because you understand what it takes, the type of energy it takes there's an interesting saying that we all like to say. It takes one to know one. Do you really think that you can see in someone else what doesn't exist inside of you? When I go into prisons and I'm meeting with people who have murdered other people, some people ask, Steve, how can you be around that person? And I said, because they don't deserve my judgment. They said, well, what do you mean? I said, every last one of you has had a thought about killing somebody at some point, whether it was yourself or another human being. We have all experienced that thought. And the only difference between you and the person sitting on death row is that they believed that thought, got in the car, drove that thought right off the cliff, and acted on it. And the only difference between you sitting where you are and them sitting in a cell is action. But you had the thought. You felt it, which is why you judge them so hard, because you know what it takes. You know what that feels like, and you don't like what that feels like inside yourself, so you project it and blame it on them, and then you condemn them when really they're just a proxy for what's going on inside of you. but God being thought. What are you creating with your thinking when you're just running around judging people and holding grudges? What do you think? What are you thinking of? What are your dominant thoughts? As a man or woman thinketh in his or her heart, subconscious mind, so shall they be. Letting go of judgment is not for them, it's for you. Some of you believe that the only way to do things is your way. Your way is the best way. So you judge people for not doing things the way you would do it. I remember I was sitting in a barber's chair, and we were looking at a video, and they said, if it was me, and I immediately cut him off and said, but it ain't you. But it's not you. There are 8 billion different people on the planet, which means there are 8 billion different perspectives. And that's the way God meant it to be. The diversity. I want you to imagine this for a second. I want you to imagine being perfect always. I want you to imagine having existed with no beginning, absolutely perfect, and it's just you. How would you know yourself? If you had nothing else to go off of. You're perfect. You've always have been, always will be. And I remember sitting with God, and I asked God, why am I here? And God said, you are here so that I may know myself. I have been perfect, always and forever. But I wanted to know who I am. And so I created you. I started with the first. And from the first, I created the second. And then from the first and second, I created the third. And so on and so forth. So that every time you procreate, you take 2 completely different personalities, put them together and create something new. It is infinite. The number of combinations of diversity that can happen between human beings. And all of it is so that God can experience itself through you. But I also want you to imagine there's a difference between playing. If I was an actor and I got commissioned to play the role of a homeless man, I have 2 ways I can play this role. Or excuse me, I want to experience what it's like to be homeless. I'm rich. I'm being commissioned to play this role, but I need to know, in order to play the role authentically, I need to know what it's like to be homeless. And so I'll go live on the street for 6 months. Now, it's easy for me to deal with what's coming my way because I know in the back of my mind that I'm rich. And whatever I'm experiencing right now is temporary. That's a very different experience for a rich person to play a poor person or homeless person than for someone to be born homeless. Because to them, they're not playing a role. They're not studying a role. So it's a lot harder to deal with life as it's coming at them because they just feel condemned, like they've been forgotten, like they've been forsaken. I'm sharing that because when I sat and I asked God, what is the purpose of this entire experience? He says, so that I may know myself through you. But in order to know myself authentically, I needed you to forget that I am. Because if you came into this world knowing that I am, it would not be an authentic experience. So I needed you to forget that I am. But buried deep down inside of you, I will place the desire to know that I am. And some of you will seek that desire out. And some of you won't. And either way, it's okay because it's all a part of my plan to know myself wholly. I want to know every aspect of myself. I want to know every single possible way that I can exist. And I do that through you, all of you. That's why this experience that you are having is not about anybody else but you. Is it so that you can show God how awesome He is through you, living through you, created in His image. An image does not mean, the likeness does not mean how you look. But it is those higher level faculties that you have, those thinking faculties, that ability to create your own reality as God created you. That is His image, that is His likeness, and that is the gift that was given to you. But you forgot. We all did. So the only journey to make is the journey to know thyself. The salvation is to know yourself. God said to me, Jesus understood this. And that's why, through His love for you, to know who you are, He was willing to sacrifice Himself to create an example that could not be overlooked. He said, come through me to get to the Father. But the Father is I am, which is you. Follow me long enough so that you ask the question, who am I? Father, reveal yourself to me directly. He said, if you see me, you see the Father, but he's talking about the presence, the consciousness of I am. And so to be Christ conscious is to understand your relationship with I am, the nature of reality through I am and thought. It is the awareness of being. And so this need to judge other people is driven by fear, not love. You got to let go of the fear of being looked down upon because you didn't perform the way you thought everybody else should perform, or everyone thought you should perform. You got to let go of the fear of not being in control. I personally like the word yield, to yield. Because the only thing you can truly control is what thoughts you choose to pay attention to. Everything else is completely out of your control. Your thoughts, your own personal thoughts. You can't control which ones show up because whichever ones show up depends on what you're intaking. If you're constantly thinking about relationships ending and going bad, take a look at what you're watching. Take a look at what you're reading. Take a look at what you're paying attention to. If you watching Love and Hip Hop on BET and then wonder why you're constantly thinking of drama, constantly thinking about how people could backstab each other, is because of what you're intaking. This is why Jesus talked about guarding your mind. It's to protect yourself from creating things you don't want to experience. Because you create everything you experience. You got to let go of the fear of being hurt. And you only fear being hurt because you don't understand that no one can hurt you without your permission. But a truly awakened mind knows that they can't be hurt. Because a truly awakened mind understands that everything everyone else does is either an extension love or a cry for help. So the only reason someone is trying to hurt you is because they're hurting. But if you don't know who you are, and you're just as asleep as they are, then you spend all your time trying to guard yourself from being hurt. And so hurt becomes your dominant thinking, and wonder why you keep getting hurt. Hurtful shit keeps happening to you. It's because you're the one creating it. Some of you got to let the fear of not being good enough go, because good enough is relative. And I want you to understand that you were never not good enough. It's just one day as a kid, you had a thought you weren't good enough because something didn't go the way you wanted it to, or you weren't getting the attention that you wanted to get. And so you had a thought that you weren't good enough. And then you followed that thought right off the fucking cliff, and you've built your whole life on it. Some of you got to let go of the fear of facing yourself. It's time to open that closet and stop being scared. Imagine walking into your child's room and they done built a fort around their bed and they got a plastic bat in their hand, and you're going, "What's wrong, baby?" And they're like, "There's a monster in the closet, mommy. There's a monster in the closet, daddy." Now, you and your grown mind know that there is not a monster in that closet, but in their minds, they 100% believe that there is a monster in their closet. And until you open that door, that monster will always feel real to them. Well, the same goes for you. There are perspectives that you have of things in the past that is holding on to you. And this is why Jesus said, let the dead bury the dead. But you don't want to open that closet. As a matter of fact, you've built such a security perimeter around that closet, you don't want anybody going near that closet, but then wonder why you will never experience peace in the kingdom. Why you can never love unconditionally, because you got that monster or perceived monster in the closet, and you need to open that door and stop being afraid to face yourself. That's why when you are truly doing the work of the kingdom, it is to face yourself, and you ain't got time to be judging other people because you're too busy paying attention to yourself. I want you to ask yourself, what would life look like? You are absolutely judgment free. Who would you be able to be? If you no longer about what other people thought about you, you no longer paid attention to what you thought about other people. You was just love all the time. What would you be able to do? What would you be free to do? If you let go of any notion of judgment and just subscribe to the idea that nobody deserves your judgment and everybody deserves your love. And especially you. Not even you deserve your judgment. What would you be able to have? What type of relationships would you be able to have? What would you finally be able to have in your life by letting go of this need to judge? You can truly experience heaven on earth by taking these logs out of your eye, taking grudges out of your eye, taking judgment out of your eye, so that when you look upon the person in front of you, all you see is Christ. Then you would become the savior of the world. Imagine you walking into a room and people looking at you, and all they see from you is love. All they feel from you is love. And imagine how that would feel for you. Imagine living in a world, your own little world, where all that exists is love. You can unsubscribe from judgment. It is not necessary. Unsubscribe. Because whatever your theologians or religionists people are teaching you about judgment, that is not the message Jesus preached. He preached unconditional love. And you could either love unconditionally or you could love with conditions. Only one of them is going to allow you to experience heaven on earth right here and right now. Thank you all for being here. I love you. Please send me messages, emails, send me texts if you have my number. Invite people that you know want to hear this message, that want to create a relationship with God without religion. Because if you truly want to find God, look in the mirror. And if you have a hard time with that statement, that's exactly why you need to come here every single Wednesday. I love you all. Have a blessed week.